Happy New Year! And welcome to Start Your Podcast Now. I am Paul the Podcast Guy, and this is the podcast where I talk to you about experience I've had in radio and PR, how it translates into creating a podcast, because I want to make sure that you get everything you need to start your podcast now. So if you have any questions for me, just email me, paul@paulthepodcastguy.com. Maybe you want to know about podcasting. Maybe you want to know an interpretation of that dream you had last night. Maybe you want to ask questions about the band Dream Theater. Maybe you're curious about Sega's hit game Nights into Dreams. Or maybe you just want to tell me about the time you saw me in a dream. Well, whatever it is, you can email me at paul@paulthepodcastguy.com. And this episode is brought to you by, dreams. That's really convenient. 9 out of 10 doctors recommend dreams over nightmares. Try dreams today. When you enter REM sleep, dreams are where it's at for having a really great time. So try dreams, won't you? Now, this is the first podcast of the new year, and I have made a resolution this year that I am going to get back to letting the bottomless pit of topics choose all of the topics. I've kind of gotten out of the habit, and my apologies to the bottomless pit of topics. So, we're going to go ahead and reach into it here. Quick. Okay, all right. Got a really good one here, and let's see. Oh, this is a really good one. It's all about counting the cost. In fact, it's kind of apropos for a new year. It's all about making sure you start off on the right foot. So counting the cost is a really, really good way of putting this because you need to know if it's right for you to do a podcast. And we're going to talk about 6 things today that really need to be in the forefront of your mind before you start doing this podcasting thing. Which brings us to today's inspirational quote that doesn't suck, which is, "Don't be afraid to calculate risks," said by Pastor Sunday Adelaja. Now, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. The only place I could find it where his name was said aloud was with a very thick accent, so I couldn't quite understand, but hey, I'm doing my best here. So what are you going to do to calculate the cost before you start your podcast? Here are 6 things that you need to think about. Number 1, do you have the budget? So let's say you want to start doing your podcast and you're really starting from ground zero. You don't have a computer to record with, you don't have a microphone, you don't have headphones. What do you need to do in order to get started? Well, thankfully in some previous episodes, I've talked about some free options for some of the things that you will need. You have options of free hosting services from some of the really great podcasting hosting services. You have options for free recording software, but some of the things are just going to cost you money. Like if you want to get a laptop. For example, here is my old Lenovo laptop that I got years ago for about $350 new. Yep, the Lenovo is upside down. So there you go. As you can see, it's been through the ringer. I've set plenty of cups of coffee on the top of this, and it has stayed pretty darn reliable for a very long time. It was only earlier this year, about 3 or 4 months ago, that I bought a new laptop. And really then, the only reason I got one was because I wanted a solid state drive so it would be really quiet. That old laptop actually served me for the better part of 5 years. And you can still get laptops for pretty little money right now. You can go on to bestbuy.com and get yourself a brand new Lenovo for about the same price as that one. And it'll be a lot more powerful than that one because it'll be a lot newer. I mean, if you want to run Audacity, you don't need a brand new MacBook Pro. You just need a good, reliable laptop, one that you know will turn on and work every single time that you use it. And if you want to get a nice microphone, well, you can get microphones for pretty inexpensive too. I've gone over some of the really great USB options like the USB Yeti. Fantastic microphone you can get for about $100 or so on Reverb. It's made by Blue, and the Yeti is pretty much the standard for podcasters. So for overall, if you have about $500, you can get yourself a good pair of headphones, a good microphone, a decent laptop, and you'll be off to the races for recording your podcast. And of course, if you've already got the laptop, that's going to keep your costs down even more. But you do have to think about the cost. And you will have to think about things like microphone stands. You will have to think about things like soundproofing material for whatever space you're going to be recording in. It's not necessary, but it's something you'll have to think about in the long term. Number 2, do you have the time? Make no mistake, this is going to take you a lot of time to do. Even if you do things like recording a bunch all at once, you're still going to have to do things like lining up guests, making sure that your setup is ready to go at a moment's notice. You'll have to edit, you'll have to put in the intro and the outro, you'll have to make a graphic for it if you're going to upload it to, say, Libsyn like I do. I have to upload a graphic every single week, and you're just going to have to take the time. It's going to cost you that time. So if you have a day job, you have to factor this in. Are you going to do this on your weekends? Are you going to do this in your spare time? Are you going to do this at night? Because no matter what you do, this is going to take up the time that you could be doing something else. So if you'd rather be sitting on the couch watching TV, maybe this podcasting thing ain't for you. Number 3, can you stick to a schedule? So can you keep yourself on track with making this thing every single week, month, whatever it is that your schedule is? Basically, you're going to have to set yourself a lot of reminders. You're going to have to set aside aforementioned time, but you're going to have to make sure that you do this on a consistent basis. I make sure every single Monday I have the time set aside to record this. So that way, by the next day, it is up and ready to go. I really don't want to ever have to come to a situation where I don't have one ready. So sometimes I record a couple in advance. Sometimes I record in the middle of the week. But I have that time scheduled every single Monday to make sure that I can do this. Number 4, do you have a topic that can be sustained? Do you have 10 shows, 100 shows, 1,000 shows that can be done off of your specific topic? If you're doing a travel show, do you have enough in you to be able to go find interesting things to be able to bring to your podcast on a regular basis? Because whatever it is you have to do, you have to be able to talk about it for a while. And maybe your podcast about boxes might not last. Maybe you've got 1,000 shows worth of really interesting material on boxes. I don't know. Not a lot of those are hitting the iTunes Top 100, so I'm betting not. Number 5, are there any legal reasons that you can't do your podcast? This is something to think about. Maybe your company has a non-disclosure and you are planning on using all this material from your workplace. Well, you can't do that, so gotta scrap it. Maybe you wanted to play a lot of music that's copyrighted and you don't have the rights to use it. They're kind of things you have to think about. So if you have a legal concern about your podcast, you gotta get that cleared up first. Number 6, what is your plan for what to do when you don't feel like doing it? How are you going to motivate yourself to do the podcast? See, the thing is, you can't always be externally motivated. You're not always going to have family and friends and coworkers that are going to be really cheering you on and wanting to do this. Sometimes you're just going to have to do it because you got to do it. What are you going to do to motivate yourself to do that? Are you the kind of person that can motivate yourself to do that? Can you come up with a reward system for doing it? Not only is it about scheduling the time and getting the equipment, but you got to want to do it. There are times when I don't feel like sitting down in this chair and recording this podcast. I know, shockaroo. There are times when I'd rather be with my family, when I'd be with my friends, when I'd be doing something I'd like to do just kind of extracurricularly. Well, at the end of the day, I have a deadline that I am going to meet. I have a why, and we talked about the why earlier on in the series. I really want to make sure I'm giving you ammo to start your podcast. And I'm fueled by the knowledge that there are people who are going to do this because I'm giving them the ammo to do it. So whatever your why is, don't lose sight of that. Make sure you are holding on to whatever it is that's motivating you to get behind the microphone or the camera every single time you got to do it. So in summary, all of this distilled down, all of these points, the big question is, do you want to do it? I can't answer that for you. That's something you have to answer yourself. I can help you out with some of the ammo to go towards this goal of creating a podcast, but ultimately, you're the one that has to make that decision. Now, before we wrap this bad boy up, we do have to play some podcast roulette. So I'm going to reach over to the wheel over here. Just spin that right there. Cool. Yes, I know it was below the camera before. Now it's off camera. Here we go. This is a really good one. You're going to enjoy this one. This is the Bigger Pockets podcast. They're a real estate investment podcast hosted by Brandon Turner and David Green, all designed around giving you financial independence through real estate investment. They talk to real estate pros, experts on rental units, travel gurus. They even talk to psychologists in one episode about mental strength. It's a really cool, interesting, diverse podcast with a lot of really good advice. Really recommend you check it out. Even if you're not a real estate investment person, it's still really fascinating to hear all the different angles they can take on that one topic. So that's it, guys. Hope you really found this enjoyable and informative. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. You know the drill by this point. If you're listening to me on iTunes or Libsyn, do go find me on social media as well. Paul the Podcast Guy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And of course, you can always subscribe to me on iTunes as well. Just make sure you also go to my website, paulthepodcastguy.com. That is where I'm going to give you all the really good advice, the prices for what I do, all that kind of stuff. Just go there, you'll find a whole wealth of information. And until next time, start your podcast now.